She's white. And because of that, when you consider some of the hard times other people gave her, they were resentful of the fact that this white girl came on the scene where there was a bunch of sisters that preceded her spanning decades that were big time, that deserved a lot of credit. I mean, people looked at the Cheryl Swoops of the world, the Maya Moores of the world, and others, and they said, yo, there was a bunch of people that came before her that did big things for the WNBA. I respect it. It is right. I appreciate it. But whiteness does have its privileges.
And by the way, championship game, 4 million more than the men's championship game.
Something you never would have expected.
Unreal. And record ratings for the WNBA, culminating in an incredible finals, which was finally won, by the way.
ESPN keeps calling it the Caitlin Clark effect, but the real story is more uncomfortable than that.
What was the most important sports story of the year?
Okay, ladies first, right? So I'm going to talk about the ladies, and I'm going to talk about the proliferation of women's sports and that much debated and discussed term, the Caitlin Clark effect, which is really an umbrella term for everything that happened in sports because it was so much more far-reaching.
Because Caitlin hasn't even had to play for the pressure to spike. And today, I'm going to show you why the Indiana Fever are about to explode. Not from a hot streak, not from a lucky run, but because of two massive signings that most fans aren't framing the right way. Quick clarity so nobody feels tricked. When I say two signings, I'm not talking about free agents. I'm talking about two powerful signatures, two people signing their names on bets that move real money, real attention, and real leverage. Stay with me, because at the end, I'll give you a simple 3-signal checklist that tells you when the Fever explosion is locked in before the highlights do. All right, first signing.
WNBA, as we all know, is wrapping up this remarkable season of growth and interest. And it comes off the heels of what Caitlin Clark helped achieve at Iowa for the last couple of years, those remarkable ratings, the women's tournament outrating the men's. But there have been some growing pains as well, right?
PSA just dropped their 2025 numbers, and if you're not into collectibles, here's why that matters. PSA is the company that grades trading cards and basically decides the rules of the hobby. When PSA talks, collectors listen, and collectors don't run on feelings. They run on demand. The headline is insane. Caitlin Clark is now the most collected active basketball player on the planet. Not top 5, not top 10, the most collected. And yes, that means she passed LeBron James. Now pause there, because this is where the story turns into something bigger than sport. LeBron is a global icon, 4 championships, 4 MVPs, the all-time scoring record, 2 decades of being the face of basketball. But Caitlin just beat every active NBA player alive in the collectibles market. And the wild part is how she did it.
Collinsville Trading Card Store found one basketball card that could change his life.
It is a one-of-a-kind autographed Caitlin Clark rookie card. An auction company says it could go up for $200,000.
She did it while injured, while not playing meaningful games, while sitting. That's the first sign the Fever are about to explode. Her influence keeps growing even when the game stops. PSA didn't just give a ranking either. They released a geographic breakdown, a state-by-state map showing which athletes are getting graded the most. When you click into basketball, it's basically a landslide election map. It's Clark country, coast to coast, state after state. Collectors are sending in more Caitlin Clark cards than anyone else. And it gets even crazier. She held 3 of the 10 most graded cards overall in 2025, not just basketball. Across all sports, football, baseball, hockey, everything mixed together. That means she's lining up against names like Patrick Mahomes and Shohei Ohtani, and still rising to the top. So ask yourself, what does it mean when a player becomes the center of sports culture without even playing? It means the Fever don't just have a star, they have a market-moving event. But here's the part that should make the whole league nervous. When your business becomes dependent on one person's presence, you don't just get hype, you get fragility. And that leads to the second sign, the one that turns this from cool story into, oh no, this is real. The second sign is Nike, because Nike has taken heat lately. People saying the brand lost its edge, new competitors getting louder, Nike reacting late. And when a giant is wobbling, the market watches one thing. Not tweets, not takes, not vibes, money. Now here's where the 2 signings come in. On December 22, 2025, Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, bought 50,000 shares of Nike stock. That's not a casual click. That's not maybe. That's a signature. And I need you to think about what that actually implies. Tim Cook does not need risky plays. He could park his money safely forever and never think about returns again. So when someone like that moves personal money into a brand people were doubting, it signals confidence. It says, I think this is going up. But he wasn't alone. Nike's CEO, Elliott Hill, also bought roughly $1 million worth of Nike stock toward the end of 2025. Two signatures. Two people with elite advisors and elite access betting the same way. I'm not saying they have secret information. I'm saying this is the kind of move people make when they believe a turning point is close. And now connect the dots. Why would Nike be a turning point right now? Because Nike's quiet ace in the hole is Caitlin Clark. This is the part most people miss. Nike isn't treating Caitlin like a standard athlete endorsement. They're treating her like a product moment, a cultural moment, a reset button. Caitlin's signature shoe isn't being built like a color swap. The talk is new technology, tech that hasn't been used before, built specifically for her shoe. That matters because shoes are not just shoes anymore. A signature shoe is a story you can wear. It's identity. It's a tribe. And the right shoe can turn one athlete into an era. Now let's rehook this with a real scene, because this is where it stops being theory. Caitlin plays a preseason exhibition, a tune-up, against Brazil. Not a playoff game, not a rivalry game, not a championship. A preseason exhibition. And what happens? Carver Hawkeye Arena sells out in minutes. The demand gets so loud that ESPN decides to broadcast it. And still, even knowing it's preseason, 1.3 million people tune in. Put that next to the 2025 WNBA Finals, which averaged about 1.5 million viewers. A preseason exhibition nearly matches the league's championship series. That is not normal. That's not growth. That's a warning sign that the ceiling has shifted. Now bring this back to the Fever. The Fever are about to step into a season where the attention isn't just high, it's concentrated. And concentrated attention does one thing: it multiplies pressure. The league has to deliver. The Fever have to deliver. Caitlin has to deliver. But the machine around her is getting built regardless. Here's another scene that proves it. Caitlin misses time and ticket sales fall off a cliff. SeatGeek says ticket sales are down 71% during her absence. 71% because one person isn't playing. That's not just popularity. That's cultural weight. And when someone has that kind of gravity, the moment they return, the stage is already built. Cameras are already locked in. Storylines are already written. Now fast forward with me. Imagine Caitlin stepping back onto the court in brand new signature shoes, backed by Nike's marketing machine. Add a full off-season of build-up. Add wall-to-wall coverage. Add every sports outlet tracking the return like it's a national event. This is where the viewership ceiling gets blown open. Her first game of the 2025 season against the Chicago Sky pulled 2.7 million viewers, and that was measured using the old rating system. Now layer in a return from injury storyline, a signature shoe launch, and the feeling that something bigger is happening. Here's my call. Her return game clearing 5 million viewers is on the table. That's a projection, not a promise. But the ingredients are real: attention, scarcity, marketing, and timing. And that's what explode actually means here. Not they go undefeated. Not they win it all tomorrow. It means the Fever become appointment television. It means the league gets pulled into Caitlin's orbit. It means every game becomes a referendum. And when that happens, the sport changes. All right, payoff time. Here are the 3 signals to watch so you know the explosion is locked. Signal 1, Nike stops being vague. The moment a real shoe date starts circulating and Nike leans into it, that's your first green light. Nike does not soft launch a signature moment. Signal 2, ESPN protects the time slot. When ESPN starts shifting other programming to defend the window, it tells you they expect a number. Signal 3, venues and resale start moving. When teams upgrade to bigger arenas or resale pricing jumps weeks in advance, that's the market telling you what's coming. If you see 2 of those 3 signals at the same time, the Fever explosion is basically scheduled. Because the truth is, Caitlin's influence doesn't pause when the ball stops bouncing. It grows. It compounds. And the moment she returns, the whole league has to live inside the wave she created. If you're still watching, drop 2 signings in the comments.
The NBA made its triumphant return to NBC this season, and who did Universal bring in to really start it off with a bang? Who did they bring in to engage all audiences? They brought in the GOAT, also known as Michael Jordan. They teased Michael Jordan appearing up and down the bill to get people tuned in, to get people watching. Now, February 1st, they're rolling something else out. Basketball Night in America. Well, Michael Jordan, he already fulfilled his duties. He already took care of his commitments. He already reached all requirements on the contract. So who do they need to go get? Well, the next best thing, I suppose. Caitlin Clark.
ESPN fans, listen carefully because this move just changed the balance of power in women's basketball. Caitlin Clark just joined NBC's NBA studio panel. Not as a random guest, not as a one-time cameo. A real on-air role placed right next to NBA legends in prime time during the exact window when the WNBA Players Union is preparing for a CBA fight that could threaten the 2026 season.
Now, similarly, they've created some buzz with Caitlin Clark, who was announced as a special contributor for the broadcast also. She will be joining the crew there. You see Maria Taylor, Carmelo Anthony, Vince Carter, Tracy McGrady. And CC will be making her TV analyst debut.
Stay with me, because at the end, I'm going to show you the single line in NBC's announcement that tells you how they plan to market Caitlin going forward, and why that one line quietly pressures every negotiation inside the WNBA.
Caitlin Clark has landed herself a new, very high-profile position, and I've been wondering when this was going to happen. I knew at some point, somewhere, with some miscellaneous media outlet, Caitlin Clark would get a gig, and now we know where that gig's going to be, when that gig's going to be, and who that gig's going to be for.
Here's the context. The WNBA is heading toward the end of its current collective bargaining agreement, and players have already signaled they're willing to use real leverage if the next deal doesn't deliver what they want. That means bigger pay, better travel, better working conditions, and a bigger slice of what the league is now generating. But the problem with a holdout is simple. It only works if everyone feels the same pain at the same time. And Caitlin just made a move that reduces her pain, because her NBC role carries through the spring of 2026. So if the WNBA season happens on time, she wins. But if the season gets delayed or negotiations drag, she still wins. That's why people are reacting. Not because how dare she, but because it exposes a reality that's been building for a long time. Some players are tied to the WNBA calendar, but Caitlin is building a career that can survive without it. Now let's talk about what NBC actually did, because the details are what make this feel like a statement. NBC is launching Basketball Night in America. They're modeling it like a major event broadcast, the way they build big nights in football, and they're not hiding Caitlin in a side segment. Her debut is scheduled for February 1st before Lakers vs. Knicks at Madison Square Garden. That is one of the biggest stages you can possibly choose. And she's back March 9th for Thunder vs. Knicks. Again, primetime matchups, big markets, and a broadcast designed to travel on social media.
Announced on Tuesday that Caitlin Clark will join NBC Sports to serve as a special contributor for its new Basketball Night in America program. Caitlin Clark will make her debut as a TV analyst on February 1st, preceding the Lakers vs. Knicks game at Madison Square Garden, per a release from NBC. Wow. So this would be akin to, they have Sunday Night Football, and it starts with a pregame show called Football Night in America.
That's not a trial run. That's NBC saying, we are putting her in front of the entire basketball audience. And look at the desk they're giving her. Maria Taylor, Carmelo Anthony, Vince Carter, Tracy McGrady, Reggie Miller. That's a credibility wall. That's NBC saying Caitlin belongs in the same conversation as the game's most recognizable voices. Therefore, this isn't just about Caitlin getting another job. This is about NBC staking a claim in the future of basketball coverage.
Here we are. It will be Caitlin Clark's first time in an analyst-type role on TV. That's per Chloe Peterson. She will return to the broadcast table on March 9 for a game between Oklahoma City Thunder and the Knicks. Caitlin Clark joins Michael Jordan as a splashy acquisition for NBC and NBA coverage.
Now here's the part that makes WNBA players feel squeezed. When the union talks about leverage, the threat is time. If the season gets interrupted, players lose paychecks. They lose rhythm. They lose visibility. They lose momentum. But Caitlin's move creates a different reality. She can stay visible in the biggest basketball ecosystem in America, even if the WNBA gets messy. So while some players look at the next CBA and see risk, Caitlin looks at the same window and sees a runway. And I want to be very clear. I'm not saying Caitlin is trying to undermine the union. I'm saying her personal incentives are now different because her income and spotlight are not dependent on the WNBA schedule. That difference matters during a labor fight because owners pay attention to who can hold their breath the longest. Networks pay attention to who can keep audiences engaged, and sponsors pay attention to who can guarantee visibility. Therefore, Caitlin's NBC role becomes leverage without her even saying a word. Now add the timing. Her 2025 season ended early due to injury in July, and if the WNBA season starts in May, you're looking at a long gap. A lot of players would use that gap to train, recover, and hope the league takes care of the rest. But Caitlin is filling that gap with three things: media, national team commitments, and brand work. So when people say WNBA players explode, what they're really describing is the fear of falling behind. Because in a star-driven league, visibility becomes currency. And Caitlin just locked in a currency printer that runs even if the WNBA pauses. Now here's where the story gets sharper. NBC didn't describe Caitlin as a star of women's basketball. They described her as one of the most captivating players and dynamic scorers in basketball. Basketball, not women's basketball. Basketball, that's the line. And if you understand how networks think, you know why that line is nuclear. It's not just praise, it's positioning. It tells you NBC is not trying to keep Caitlin in a separate category. They're trying to move her into the mainstream basketball conversation beside NBA storylines, NBA debates, and NBA audiences. That is bigger than the WNBA. And that creates two reactions at the same time. Fans see it and think, finally, this is what should have happened. But players see it and think, wait, if the spotlight can move that fast for one person, what does that mean for the rest of us? Because the union's argument is collective value, but the market rewards individual gravity, and Caitlin has gravity. So when the CBA negotiations heat up, owners are going to make a quiet argument. They're going to say, the league is growing, but the growth is concentrated. They'll point to ratings spikes, ticket demand, sponsor interest, and social engagement around a small number of names. And Caitlin will be the center of that story, whether she wants to be or not. That's why this move is not just cool, it's strategic. It gives Caitlin options. It gives NBC a bridge between NBA coverage and WNBA coverage. But it also exposes the uncomfortable question the league has been avoiding. Is the WNBA trying to build an equal system, or is it becoming a star economy? Because if it's a star economy, players will fight harder for revenue share. But if it's an equal system, the league has to protect the collective, even when one person is clearly driving the most attention. And that contradiction is exactly what sets off friction. Now let me give you the real takeaway. If you're trying to predict whether the 2026 season is in danger, you don't need rumors. You need three signals. Signal 1. Watch the union's language. If they move from general frustration to specific timelines, specific demands, and actual vote talk, that's when it gets real. Signal 2. Watch the owner's concessions, not public statements, real changes, travel upgrades, roster expansion, revenue share movement. If you don't see tangible movement, the temperature rises. Signal 3, watch hedge behavior. When stars lock in outside platforms during the danger window, it tells you the industry is preparing for disruption. And when broadcasters build programming that can keep fans engaged, even if the WNBA calendar becomes uncertain, that tells you they're pricing in risk. Therefore, Caitlyn joining NBC isn't just a headline, it's a signal that the biggest star in the league is building a career that doesn't rely on the league's stability. And that reality will force the WNBA to decide what it wants to be, a league that protects the collective, or a league that rides its stars. Because you can't do both forever. So here's the question. Is Caitlyn's NBC move smart protection in a messy CBA year? Or is it the first domino that exposes how divided the money and leverage really are? If you're still watching, drop NBC panel in the comments.
Caitlin Clark's rookie year, drawing record viewership, record attendance, and what did we hear? It's not because of Caitlin Clark. This was always going to happen. It was just a matter of time. Okay. Year 2, Caitlin Clark only plays in 13 games. What? The WNBA still puts up record viewership? So the WNBA, heading into year 3, has decided to double down on the "we never needed Caitlin Clark in the first place" narrative.
WNBA is acting like it doesn't need Caitlin Clark. They cut big Arena Fever road games from 9 to 4. Meanwhile, Nike drops Caitlyn gear and the demand goes crazy. That's the whole story. And it's why fans are turning on the league. ESPN can debate impact all day, but the WNBA speaks with decisions. Here's the decision. Last season, Indiana had 9 road games moved into larger arenas. This season, it's 4. And no, the league didn't stop moving games. It moved more games overall. It went from 15 arena moves last season to 19 this season. So the league is shifting more games. But the Fever are getting fewer of the upgrades. That's why this title lands.
Last year, they had 9 games in the beginning of the season in big NBA arenas. This year, that number is down to 4 games, yet the league has went from 15 games last year, 19 games in NBA arenas this year. Teams move fewer Fever visits after Caitlin Clark's injury-riddled season. Indiana had 9 road games moved to larger arenas last year, but just 4 so far for 2026. WNBA teams are moving more games to different arenas this upcoming season, but Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever have significantly fewer of those games.
Because even if nobody says the words out loud, the schedule is sending a message. Now, a fair pushback is, maybe it's just logistics. Fine, but picture the situation like a business. You run a venue. You see one opponent coming to town that spikes demand. You have proof from last season, you have resale prices, and you have sellouts. Do you go smaller? Or do you grab the biggest building you can? That's what makes this feel intentional. And in about 20 seconds, I'm going to give you the one move that proves the league blinked. The quiet pivot they always make when the money forces their hand. But first, the clearest receipt.
And the conversation being is the treatment of Caitlin Clark. Ever since Caitlin Clark has got into this league, it's always obstacle after obstacle for this young lady. And it's clear to me, and it should be clear to all of you guys, that there is a hidden agenda against Caitlin Clark for her to be successful in the WNBA. Now, I know some of you guys is thinking, John, what do you mean is there a hidden agenda? Let's start with the first year. You know, she was attacked by pretty much players. Second year, attacked again, but the whistle was just so horrible for Caitlin. She never seen the free throw line at all prior to her getting hurt.
The Fever averaged 15,884 fans on the road last season. That's about 4,000 more than any other team. That gap is not normal. That gap is a single-player economy. People aren't buying WNBA tickets. They're buying Caitlyn tickets. So when you reduce big arena Fever games from 9 to 4, you create 2 problems. Problem 1, you leave money on the table. Problem 2, you create suspicion. Because fans don't interpret this as operational caution. They interpret it as gatekeeping. They read it as, you're trying to prove you don't need her. Now zoom in on what that looks like in the real world. A smaller venue. A Fever game announced, tickets vanish, resale jumps, fans travel anyway. The building feels tight, the vibe turns sour. That's not just a bad night, that's a trust leak. Because the fan thinks, you knew demand was coming. Now here's what makes the timing brutal. This is happening while the league is also dealing with bigger uncertainty in the background. Scheduling windows, arena availability, and the fact that big buildings don't hold dates forever. NBA arenas have concerts, they have events, they have other bookings. If you don't lock dates early, you don't maybe miss out. You lose the option completely, and so you can call it logistics, but fans see a choice. And that choice becomes the story. Now let's swing to the other half of the title, Nike. Because while the WNBA schedule shrinks Caitlyn's big arena footprint, Nike is getting hit by the opposite force, demand. Here's the Nike scene people can visualize. It's midnight. The drop goes live, fans refresh, pages stall, checkout fails. The internet floods with screenshots. The viral claim in that Nike story is insane. A $40 shirt, a new Caitlyn logo, and supposedly a wave of traffic so heavy it overwhelmed the system. The story says 10 million site visits and 500,000 orders before things crashed. Are those exact numbers inflated? Maybe. But the signal's still real. Nike doesn't accidentally get caught off guard by normal demand. Nike is built for launches. Therefore, if Caitlyn triggers chaos in that machine, she's not moving like a regular player. She's moving like a superstar. And here's what matters. The WNBA can downplay Caitlyn with a schedule, but it can't outvote the market. And in a moment, I'll show you the exact pressure point where the league will be forced to switch directions. Because Nike demand isn't just merch, it's leverage. When one player sells like that, everything downstream shifts. Sponsors lean in, broadcasters lean in, owners lean in, and the league's tone changes too, even if they pretend it won't. That's why this conflict can't last. The WNBA is sending one signal, fewer big buildings. Nike is sending another, bigger than ever. Those two realities can't coexist for long. One of them has to move. And we already know which one moves, the league. Because the money always pulls the league back to reality. Now let's talk about why fans get nasty over this. It's not because fans think the WNBA should worship one player. It's because fans hate one thing more than anything: disrespect. Fans show up. Fans spend. Fans travel. Fans bring friends. And if they feel like the league is resisting the moment out of pride, they revolt. They don't say, oh, interesting strategy. They say, you're sabotaging the best thing you've got. And that becomes the narrative that spreads. Now here's the tell that reveals the WNBA has changed its mind. It's not a press release, it's not a headline, it's not ESPN, and it's late venue upgrades. Watch what happens after the schedule is already out. If you start seeing Fever road games quietly moved into bigger arenas later, that's the league blinking. That's teams admitting the demand forced their hand. That's the silent confession that we don't need Caitlyn doesn't survive contact with ticket sales. And when that starts happening, three things show up right away. 1, more moved to a larger venue announcements. 2, resale spikes around Fever games. 3, broadcast windows quietly improve for Indiana matchups. Because once the machine realizes where the attention is, it stops arguing. It starts adjusting, so don't get distracted by speeches, watch the moves. Because the WNBA can say it's bigger than one player. But Nike just reminded everyone what the public already decided.